chapter 11, verses 2 through 6 of the New American Standard. Divide your portion to 7, or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on earth. If the clouds are full, they pour out rain upon the earth, and whether a tree falls toward the south or toward the north, wherever the tree falls, there it lies. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind, and how bones are formed in the womb of the pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them alike will be good.
Thank you, James. I love this passage that I'm going to talk about this morning in just a minute, but I love this time of year. And it's a good time to kind of reflect, take stock in this past year. We're looking forward to a brand new year. And so I like it. I think it's a great time to just consider the past and all the things that you've learned from it, and then to let some of those things go. And especially the negative things. I can't tell you how many people in the last week have said, I cannot wait for this year to be over. I cannot wait for this. Well, guess what? It's going to be over, all right? And one of the things that I want to encourage you is not to take some of that baggage into the new year. Leave some things behind. Start a brand new year with a brand new thought process. Get rid of some old habits. Man, this is a great time to kind of take stock in where we've been and where we want to go. And so I want to talk not so much congregationally, but individually, some of the things that you need maybe that you want to start, that you want to begin, some goals that you might have, a vision that you might have. And another thing I love about this time of year is that so many people come and visit their families. And so we know we've got a lot of families that are visiting today. Thank you all for being here. And some of you, I've watched you grow up. Now you're back, you're married, you've got kids, and you look just like you did when you were teenagers. And I know I look like I did 28 years ago. And you'll want to say that to me when we're done here today. You know, one of the things I notice, and Martin makes me think of this, doing such a good job leading singing. Martin, you've dropped, 50 pounds? At least 50 pounds. And I noticed today that my clothes are getting tight. It's the dry cleaner, I know. But then my family goes and buys me these skinny ties. That's not a good thing, okay, when you're trying to think about the future. Anyway, how to begin. I think how you begin anything is important. Whether it's a project or, you've got maybe a goal in mind this year you want to accomplish. This is not a sermon about New Year's resolutions, by the way. I want you to be able to take not 12 things, but 1 or 2 things that you want to see in your life accomplished in the next year, in 2020, and work on those things. Try to accomplish those things instead of forgetting about them 2-3 weeks into the new year, to actually have some wherewithal to work on whatever it is that you want to see accomplished in your life. So whether it's a brand new year or how we start a business, how we start a relationship, how we start has a great deal to do with how we finish, or even if we finish at all. So on this last Sunday in 2019, and as we begin a brand new year, I want to talk about at least 4 things that I think are important on how to start. Number one is, let me back up. Number one is we need to begin with vision. You know this verse, it's from the book of Proverbs. Where there is no vision, the people perish. The King James version of that great verse in Proverbs 29 in verse 18. And so I want you to pick a few things and have in your mind a target that you want to reach, a goal that you want to reach. You will never accomplish a goal. It'd be like driving around trying to get somewhere with your GPS on and never putting a destination in it. A lot of people live their life like that. They have no goals, they have no vision, and so they don't know how to get there. And so they just drive around. It's the same old year for them. It's the same. They do the same thing year after year after year, month after month after month. They have no goals, they have no destination, and they have no vision, and so therefore they're not accomplishing anything. So what I'm talking about is going to take some thought. It's going to take some planning, and more, I think importantly, is it's going to take some action. It's going to take some work on our part. We're going to need to be proactive. We're going to need to be intentional about reaching our goals. Now, let me say this to you in an encouraging way today, all right? Stop waiting on someone else to come along and do what only you can do. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask for other people's help, that you shouldn't rely on other people and ask people to pray for you and encourage you and maybe with your goals along the way. What I am saying is stop waiting for someone else to come along and do what sometimes only you can do. If you want it done, then you see it done. You take some initiative. You be proactive as we move forward into the new year. Take some personal responsibility for your actions, and stop blaming the dry cleaners for your tight suit. That's what I'm saying. And it's funny how it's always someone else's problem. It's always someone else's. We've got a reason. We have an excuse. So the very first thing is to set some goals, have some vision. You will never get to where you want to go unless you put something out there in front of you. And maybe I should have started with this, but maybe we wouldn't know where to pray for. But we need to begin with prayer. Whatever you do, whatever you endeavor to do, you need to bathe in prayer. You need to pray about it. And then, by the way, you need to stop and pray about it again. I'm studying through the book of Nehemiah. My goal, Lord willing, is to begin to preach through it in the beginning of 2020. And as I begin reading the book of Nehemiah, I realize Nehemiah is a book about prayer. It begins with Nehemiah praying. It continues with Nehemiah praying. Nehemiah, as many of you know, rebuilds the walls that are broken down around Jerusalem. And he begins with not only having a goal in mind and a vision of rebuilding the walls, but he bathes everything he does in prayer. And so I want to suggest to you that whatever it is that you want to endeavor, you pray about, and you keep praying about it. Now, in Ephesians 6, the Bible tells us, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication, to that end keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints. You get the idea that prayer is important. In the context of Ephesians chapter 6, the Apostle Paul has been talking about putting on the full armor of God. And he's talking about a spiritual warfare that's taking place today. And folks, I want to tell you, I think we've forgotten about that. We've forgotten that there is a war taking place, a spiritual war. You and I are involved in it. There's an unseen world that you and I are involved in. And so Paul talks about that in Ephesians 6. But the power that moves the armor is the power of prayer, the power of God. If you want, as you put on the full armor of God, to have some kind of power in your life, to achieve goals, to make sure that you can accomplish those things that you want to accomplish, you're going to need to pray about it. I love the Philippians 4. You know these verses. Don't be anxious about anything. Don't worry about anything. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. This is one of my favorites. This is Psalm 107, 28, 29, and 30. And then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He made the storm to be still and the waves of the sea to be hushed. And then they were glad that the waters were quiet, and he brought them to their desired haven. You know these words of Jesus in Matthew 7. Ask, and it will be given unto you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. What is it that you want to accomplish? If you're not praying about it, it must not mean that much to you. I have a list of things, not of things that I want to gain. There's some things that I'd like to accomplish that I pray about. But there are a list of people that I pray for. There are a list of circumstances that I pray for. Write them down. List them out. It's amazing. If you have a prayer list, something to guide you, one of the things that you'll be able to do later on is come back and right beside those things you're praying about, here's when God answered this. Here's how God answered this. It's amazing what God will do in your life if you will just ask Him for some help. Pray about it. Stop wringing your hands. Stop talking to other people and talk to God about whatever it is in your life that you desire. And then the third thing that I want to tell you is that you need to do it now. That's what the verses that were just read were all about. I want to read them in the New Living Translation. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they'll never harvest. Just as you cannot understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, so you cannot understand the activity of God who does all things. Plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if a profit will come from one activity or another. Maybe both. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Begin now. Start today. You can only plan and pray for so long before it becomes an excuse or a stalling tactic or laziness or being afraid. I think fear, Satan uses fear to keep us from accomplishing those things that we want to accomplish for him and for ourselves. So when is the time to do it? Start now. Do it now. It begins with a step of faith. For many years we've been talking about taking a leap of faith. All I'm saying today is just take one step. Just take one step. There's a kind of a famous story. In fact, it became a title of a book. A young lady, she can remember her dad talking to her brother when he was a little boy, and he had a school project, and he had to write a little bit about 50 birds, and he was overwhelmed. He said, "Dad, I'll never get this done." And she said, her dad came into the room, and he said, "Listen, son, we're going to do this one bird at a time." And she wrote a book kind of based on that. He said, "Don't be overwhelmed by the 50. Just do it one at a time." And that's what they did. Dad and son sat down together, and they did one thing after another. It doesn't have to be a leap of faith. All it has to be is a step of faith. But you've got to take the first step if you want others to follow. In the opening chapters of the book of Joshua, remember, they're facing a home, and their hearts have been led back home to the promised land. And what stands between them and the promised land is the river Jordan. Now, Jordan isn't a very big river. In fact, most of the time it's about 100 feet wide. It's only about 20 feet deep. So it wouldn't be bad for a massive army to travel over it. But one time a year, the Jordan swells. It is so massive, and it's springtime when the snow melts out of the mountains and the water comes. It is a torrential, massive river. The Jordan becomes an impossible feat, and that's what the timing of Joshua 1, 2, and 3. They come to the Jordan. They're going to cross over the Jordan to the other side, and God begins to talk to them. He says, "Consecrate yourself. Get some things ready. We're going to walk over." But then he takes some of the spiritual leadership, and with the ark, they begin to cross over. If you know the story, you know this, that the water begins to recede. 17 miles back, the water begins to recede. But it doesn't happen until Israel puts their feet into the water. As soon as their feet touch the water, as soon as they walk down and walk into the water begins to dam up. The water begins to recede 17 miles back as Israel crosses over to the other side. What is the one thing that you need to do? What is, maybe to ask it like this, what is the Jordan in your life? What is it that you're afraid of? What is it that seems like an impossibility? What barrier stands in your path? Is there a habit? Is there a relationship? Is there something that's keeping you back, causing you to be afraid? All I'm saying is pray about it and then take some steps of faith to allow yourself to move ahead. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving ahead in spite of that fear. What I have found in my own life is this, is that the first step is always the hardest. It's always the most difficult, but it is the most, I believe, important. Because without a first step, you will never have a second and a third and a fourth. So don't take a giant leap. Take a step. Again, Ecclesiastes 4, don't wait for perfect conditions. You'll never get anything done. There are some folks, they're just waiting for the stars to align. They get the right amount in their bank account, or somebody's going to say the right things to them. They're waiting to retire. They're waiting for their kids to move. They're waiting for, so what are you waiting on? If there are some things that you've been praying about that you want to see accomplished in your life, then see them now. Imagine what God can do in and through you if you will begin to take steps of faith. I love Ephesians 3:20. God can do anything, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it pushing us around. He doesn't do it by pushing us around, but working within us, His Spirit deeply and gently within us. You know, some people say, Harold, I'm waiting on God. It could be that God is waiting on you. It could be that God is waiting on you. You've been praying about this and talking about it and talking to other people about it. He could be waiting on you to put your feet into the Jordan, to take that first step so that He can see some faith on your part. And then the last thing I want to say is that there are some things that we need to leave behind. Leave the burden of your past behind. There are some things we need to set down this year and not take up again. Your future is unknown. You know, I love my family. I've got them all here today, and we all went to see Frozen 2. If you have not seen it, it is just a roller coaster ride of emotions, okay? And in Frozen 1, I learned to let it go. And in Frozen 2, I learned that you go into the unknown. And my granddaughter is Elsa. And she will sing you this song when if you ask her after the service is over. I won't ask her now because she'd come up here and sing it. But you know, there was in even some of the subtle ways of that, there was this idea of leaving something behind, setting it down, and moving forward. You know, it is, tomorrow is unknown. Next week is unknown as we move forward. It's not unknown to God. It may be unknown to us, but it is unknown. Philippians 3, Paul said, brothers and sisters, I don't consider myself as having laid hold of it yet, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining for what lies ahead, I press toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. I like what the writer of Hebrews said in Hebrews 12 and verse 1. Since therefore we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out before us. Do not enter another year dragging your old baggage behind you. Let it go. Put it down. Cast it off. Have you ever met someone, and I have some friends like this, that every about 5 years we get together and you talk to them, and they bring up the same hurtful thing that happened to them 20 years ago. They bring up the same thing that happened to them 30 years ago. Don't you just want to sing to them, let it go, let it go, you know? But they're going to drag that along with them. I'll tell you what, this idea of entering a new, it's not just a new year, y'all, it's tomorrow, a new day. Kay and I not long ago were in Bonaire, this island in the Caribbean, and in Bonaire they have these salt flats. They have this salt mining. It's a massive operation, and you can see in a distance it looks like sand, but what it is it's giant mounds of salt, and they have been mining it for years. And years ago, the Spanish were using slaves to do most of that work. And they built homes for them. And you would think, oh, what a kind thing. If you saw the homes they built for them, you wouldn't think it was so kind. Even though it's facing the Caribbean and it's facing the water, these huts were about 10 by 10, and 7 people would live in them every day, each hut. It was a horrible, deplorable situation. But when slavery was abolished, those people didn't leave the island. When slavery was abolished, they didn't actually go very far. What I found out was they left those huts and they went to the other side of the coast. It's not really far away, it's maybe a mile or two. and they were allowed to build new homes. And when they built new homes, they built the front door facing the opposite direction of those huts that they lived in, and the back door to what they had experienced. It wasn't that they had to get away from it. It's that every day they got up, they walked out the front door and said, you know what? I've got a new day, a new life. I'm putting the old life behind me. That's what I used to be, but that's not what I'm going to be. And that's what many of us need to do. Whatever it is that's weighing us down, whatever it is that's shackling us, we need to cast it off. That's what the writer of Hebrews is saying. Since we have so great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us. For years, Satan has been tackling us and tripping us up and not allowing us to accomplish the dreams and especially the wonderful things that God has for us in our life. Move forward. Take the burdens and set them down. Now, we have to take stock of the past, learn from the past, learn from your mistakes. Man, if we don't learn from our mistakes, we're in big trouble. Learn from your mistakes, but move on from them. That's not what you were. That's not who you are. We're going to sing a song here. I love this song that Martin has chosen for us this morning. Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone. And it is the amazing grace of God that we can really move forward in our life. You know, salvation is a new beginning. In fact, they call it a new birth. When we identify with the death, burial, and resurrection, when we're baptized into Christ, it's not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a brand new life. We're buried with Him and raised to walk in a brand new life. It's a new birth, a new start, a new beginning. It is setting our past down. It's putting that sin behind us. We are new creatures in Christ. We're not bound. We're not held. We have the Spirit of God now in our life. And as we move forward, we're not moving forward in perfection. We're moving forward in progression, being more and more like God, being more and more like Christ every day. And maybe you need to do that this morning. Maybe this is your morning to say, I'm going to set some things down. I'm not going to move forward without doing this most important thing, and that is giving God my life. He is waiting on us to take maybe this small step of faith, to say, I want to give my life to you once and for all, that you'll be baptized, that you'll put your past behind you. No, you're not going to be raised to walk in perfection, but all your sins will be forgiven and your name will be added to the Lamb's Book of Life, and heaven will be your home. I can't imagine anything more important than starting new like that today. And if you have not, then I hope I can help you with that this morning. But for some of us and most of us here today who have already done that, I want to encourage you this year, 2020, to have some wherewithal, to have some vision, to start writing down a few things that you want to accomplish in your life and then work on them, pray about them. Start moving. Take small steps of faith toward those things. Stop using excuses and blaming other people, and then set the past behind you and move forward into a great brand new day. God has something wonderful waiting on you. Your best days are ahead of you. If I can help you in any way, you come while we stand and sing this song of invitation.